Excellencies, good afternoon. My name is Jorge Chediek, Director of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation and your Envoy Secretary General for South-South Cooperation. On behalf of the Permanent Mission of India and our office, it is an honor to have you and welcome you all here. I want to recognize the presence of His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Ambassador Syed Akbaruddin, Permanent Representative of India, Mr. Achim Steiner, Administrator of the United Nations Development Programme, Ms. Grete Faremo, Executive Director of the United Nations for Project Services, His Excellency Mr. Adonia Ayebare, Permanent Representative of Uganda and President of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation, His Excellency Walton Alfonso Webson, Permanent Representative of Antigua and Barbuda, Ms. Fekitamoe Loa Utoi Kamanu, High Representative for LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS, and colleagues, resident coordinators who join us, Secretary General, our colleague Stephen O'Malley, the UN Resident Coordinator in Barbados, Mr. Mario Samaja, the UN Resident Coordinator in Mauritania, and Mr. Siaka Koulibaly, the UN Resident Coordinator in Benin. It's an honor to welcome you all here to commemorate the first anniversary of the UN India Development Fund. This fund is a strategic partnership of the Government of India and our UN Office for South-South Cooperation on behalf of the United Nations system. This fund reflects the commitment of India to South-South cooperation. India was present at birth when the concept joined the international agenda in Bandung and has been a strong practitioner throughout. At the time when very important debates are taking place on development financing for sustainable development goals and reforming the United Nations system to big linkages across agendas, this fund aims to do that through empowering the resident coordinator and operating in the real spirit of South-South cooperation. So this fund, as it says, is the first anniversary, and I would like now to invite the presentation of a very short video, Mr. Secretary General, that showcases some of the elements of the fund. So please, let's proceed with the video.
The India-UN Development Partnership Fund. India is partnering with the United Nations system to advance the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. Launched in 2017, the India-UN Development Partnership Fund supports development projects for the benefit of small island developing states, least developed countries, and landlocked developing countries. A dedicated window under this fund supports additional projects in developing country members of the Commonwealth. These South-South cooperation projects are implemented in partnership with national institutions and United Nations agencies, funds, and programs. India has pledged $150 million to support governments of partnering countries, including $50 million dedicated to developing country members of the Commonwealth. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres congratulates the Government of India on its strengthened partnership with the United Nations system through the India-UN Development Partnership Fund, a promising engagement to jointly advance towards the Sustainable Development Goals. United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed says,
South-South cooperation is one of the world's most important pathways to prosperity. I am therefore delighted that India is demonstrating such strong leadership to helping others through the India-UN Development Partnership Fund.
In the first 12 months following its launch in June 2017, already 22 projects in 25 countries have been finalized. Non-earmarked resources have been allocated in a portfolio of varied projects that respond to the priorities of partner countries to implement one or several of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The India-UN Development Partnership Fund is managed by the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation. The India-UN Development Partnership Fund, joining forces across countries of the South to overcome development challenges together.
I'm pleased now to invite the Secretary General to make his remarks.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it is for me an enormous pleasure to join you to celebrate the first anniversary of the India-UN Development Partnership Fund. India played a very important role in shaping the Sustainable Development Goals. And even before the goals were crystallized, India's own development efforts and vision reflected many of the same priorities and aspirations. India is, for all of us, a very important inspiration. Today, in the third year of implementing the 2030 Agenda, I thank India for its strong commitment to multilateralism and to partnership with the United Nations, which is expressed in many ways across the global agenda, but which we see again through the activities of this important fund. A fund that shows the further deepening of South-South cooperation, an increasingly valuable dimension of our work for development. But this is also the moment to remind that South-South cooperation is not an instrument aiming at replacing North-South cooperation. South-South cooperation is not an instrument for the commitments that were made by developed countries now to be put aside. South-South cooperation must be a stimulus for an intensified North-South cooperation, for the Addis Ababa agenda to be fully implemented, and for everybody to assume their responsibilities in the context of a world in which we want a fair globalization, in which justice prevails in international relations. And the fund's support for Southern-owned and Southern-led projects to the developing world rightly emphasizes solidarity, mutual benefits, as well as national ownership. And these are values that are also central when we recently approved in the General Assembly a resolution on the UN development system. And the fund focus on supporting people in least developed countries, small island development states, and landlocked developing states reflects our ambition to reach those that are left furthest behind and to reach them first. Let me commend India once again for its leadership and solidarity, and I look forward to further engagement on this timely initiative, and I will have the opportunity soon in Delhi to congratulate the Indian government on this very, very important initiative.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. And now the permanent representative of India will hand the report over to you of the activities of the fund. I now invite the permanent representative of India to make his remarks.
Secretary General, and in a term that the Secretary General has popularized, all protocol observed. Excellencies, friends, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you here today on this special event where we mark the first anniversary of the establishment of the India-UN Development Partnership Fund. We are greatly encouraged, Secretary General, by your presence here today and by the presence of many of our friends from the Global South. As a large developing country with 1/6 of the world's population, we in India are acutely aware of the entire range of challenges that developing countries continue to face. We have, therefore, long worked for strengthening the development activities of our multilateral engagements, especially here at the United Nations. It is in this spirit that last year, India launched, in association with the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation, this fund. We believe that it is a unique model of South-South cooperation in association with the UN, in that the entire contribution is absolutely non-conditional, elicits projects from partner countries completely based on their priorities, and does not require any Indian involvement in any of the projects. The implementation of the projects is primarily through the UN agencies, many of whom are also represented here today. The first project last year on this World Oceans Day aimed at improving climate resilience in a set of small Pacific Island states. From the first project of $1 million, we are happy to convey that the annual contribution of the portfolio has multiplied several times within the first year of its operation. As has been shown in the video clip, the Government of India is now committed to, over the next decade, spend US dollars 100 million and an additional amount of 50 million for Commonwealth countries under this fund. We are happy that within the first 12 months, 25 countries are now working as partners. The more than 20 projects that are initiated by these countries are according to their specific requirements and national priorities. This effort is neither to supplant nor to supplement the engagement of North-South cooperation. It is a small token of our solidarity with our friends from the Global South. All these projects are aimed at implementation of the SDGs. Last September, we were also able to allocate resources to facilitate recovery efforts following natural disasters affecting small states. The fund is a flexible format. For instance, it could assist peace building or even climate action projects now under such initiatives as the Africa Adaptation Initiative. We are also open for the funds from this project to be leveraged by any of the UN agencies and national authorities to attract additional funding. We hope that in the coming months and years, we are able to further expand the portfolio of projects and partners through this fund. Many of you may be aware that India is also engaged in another unique model of South-South cooperation here at the UN. That is through the India-Brazil-South Africa Fund, popularly known as the IPSA Fund. This was the progenitor of our thinking on the India-UN Development Fund. The UN Office for South-South Cooperation is also working with us on that fund. These funds are, of course, in addition to other extensive development partnerships, initiatives being pursued by India with fellow developing countries in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean, as well as the Pacific, through other formats. The model of the fund is a perfect fit for the reform of the UN development system that the SG, ably assisted by the DSG, Ms. Amina Mohammed, have put in place. It allows for attraction of funds at the country level by various UN agencies. So today, we have an ask of the Secretary General. As you know, no meeting should end without an ask. Now, this is not a difficult ask, but it's an important one. It is what we can perhaps term to enable us to make this a 1, 2, 3 process. It is not an ask for India, nor an ask only for our developing country partners. It is an ask of the UN development system. And the ask is to enhance the speed of implementation of projects that are entrusted to the UN agencies. We have put funds up front. On our part, we have cut down mechanisms for assessing a project from our partner countries and accepting it in consultation with the South-South Fund to less than 1 month. That's part 1 of the 1, 2, 3 process. Part 2 is that we hope that each of the projects in this fund are implemented quickly and completed within a 2-year period. And that's 2 of the 1, 2, 3 process. So now that we have part 1 and part 2, we hope that no project expands beyond 3. Only then can we have a 1, 2, 3 process. For that process to be completed, my request to all of you is, and the implementing agencies in particular is, can we speed up those processes on your side too? We hope that the Secretary General's new reform system that has been put into place and will become effective from 1 January 2018 will provide for greater efficiency, greater effectiveness to the UN's facilitation of sustainable development efforts across the world, and ensure in helping us complete the 1, 2, 3 process for triangular cooperation with the Global South. For that, Secretary General, we request you to earnestly have a look at this. Friends, we are also embarking on the preparations of the upcoming major conference, BAPA Plus 40 on South-South cooperation, that will be hosted by Argentina next year. We look forward to working with all our partners to make that a constructive engagement that leads to concrete outcomes in the field of South-South cooperation. I acknowledge here the presence of the permanent representative of Uganda, who is steering us in that process, and assure him that as a strong votary of South-South cooperation, India stands ready to support him as he leads the way forward. Once again, may I thank you all for taking the time out to be present here, and look forward to hearing your perspectives on how we can make this nascent effort better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I would like to ask now the Permanent Representative of Uganda, Mr. Adonia Yebere, to give his remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At a time when important debates are taking place on development financing for sustainable development goals and reforming the United Nations development system to build linkages across the agendas and UN bodies, India has been putting words to action with this fund. The fund has been a refreshing approach and an opportunity for the United Nations to evolve new practices that contribute to better ways of operating. Beyond these highly appreciated resources contributed and the transformational projects implemented through the fund, I commend the model this fund puts forward for collaboration. The India Fund exemplifies South-South cooperation at work. Its design, procedures, and projects are all guided by South-South principles. This is no surprise, since India has been, for decades, a valuable contributor to the adoption of internationally agreed framework for South-South cooperation. Through this fund, India is putting into practice many of the policies and broad guiding principles that the High-Level Committee on South-South cooperation has been discussing and formulating in our resolutions. For the example, the fund's partnership model that insists on government-to-government requests for support and definition of priorities strongly underscores South-South cooperation principles, such as national leadership and collaboration among peers. The fund also has been able to work with a range of UN agencies and on several SDGs. Several UN agencies, funds, and programs are already implementing the fund's projects. This inclusion of UN agencies and potential implementing partners of the fund is praiseworthy. It is a testament to India's commitment to multidimensional approaches to reducing poverty and attaining sustainability, and to the vision of one UN that is well integrated and structured to deliver on global mandates. And I take this opportunity to congratulate the Secretary General for the resolution we have just adopted on reforming the UN development system. Yeah, one of the principles this fund is promoting is prompt action that is focused on meeting national needs for SDGs and climate adaptation plans under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. As I conclude, I wish to thank India for focusing on national ownership, which is a fundamental component of this fund, as India emphasizes responding to country requests in their priority areas in order to encourage resilience and self-sustenance in the long term. Through this fund, the UN has been able to ensure that each project is executed with this highly valued principle in mind. I appreciate this opportunity to express my appreciation to India, and I look forward to seeing this fund continue to grow and help populations around the world. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, and I would like the room to allow the Secretary General to depart. Although, Secretary General, I wanted to point out this should be for the next month your favorite room, because it's CR7, Cristiano Ronaldo's trademark. So good luck. So let me accompany you to the door, and then I invite the administrator of UNDP to make his presentation.
That's a good one, eh? Cristiano Ronaldo.
Georgie, I have to say your loyalties are very split here in terms of the endorsement of teams, so be careful. The next few weeks, this building will see a great deal of red lines. But Secretary General, I wished him good luck and his team. Ambassador, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, everything that is, in a sense, defining about today's occasion has already been raised by both Secretary General Ambassador Akbaruddin and also my dear colleague from Uganda, Adiono. Therefore, my role really here is to accompany you today to celebrate, first of all, a remarkable commitment by India. Not only in the way that you have described the approach of India's engagement, its openness to a broad programmatic set of opportunities for countries, its non-earmarking, the trilateral nature of the cooperation that underpins the cooperation with also UN Office for South-South Cooperation, I think, are exemplary. And they are the kinds of financial underpinnings that we have both as part of the Rio +20 outcomes, the 2030 agenda, but also the UNDS reform called for. And I hope that in stepping up in the way that India has done, Ambassador, we will see a great deal more support. I think the fund has already proven that it can live up to the 1, 2, 3 test. I mean, the speed with which a number of proposals have been processed, have been initiated, I think speaks to the potential. As always, we may sometimes have to do our homework, because part of the reason you turn to us to be part of the equation is that there is a good quality and integrity to the foundations upon which we build these programs, but that should be no reason not to be able to complete these kinds of initiatives in the 2-year horizon that you have outlined. I would also like to welcome your suggestion that very often this fund may become a vehicle for also supporting other South-South initiatives. You made reference just now to the Africa Adaptation Initiative, which the President of Gabon has also led by making a commitment from the Gabonese Treasury to help Africa bring more momentum to the issue of adaptation, since it feels that the international community is still slow on that. It would be an excellent example to see the kind of cross-South-South collaboration at work. And I also, since we have our resident coordinators here on screen, to thank our staff in the field, because they are part of your team, and I really want to describe them in that way, in making this idea come alive, both through the ideas it generates, but most importantly in providing us with the teams, the infrastructure and the support to actually bring these funds to work on the ground. For us in UNDP, South-South cooperation is our daily bread and butter, and I myself, during my visit recently in India, was witness to how we in UNDP are working with India in taking new software solutions that allow remote health stations, for instance, to be in constant monitoring contact about the vaccine stocks as an export hit to other parts of the world. This is the way we should be working. The best ideas, wherever they are sourced from, become accessible to every country on the planet. In that spirit, once again, congratulations to you, your government, to the UN Office for South-South Cooperation and our strong commitment to continue to work with you on this aspiration. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Steiner. And now I invite the Executive Director of UNOPS to make her remarks.
Thank you, and Excellencies, honorable colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here with you today to celebrate the first anniversary of the India-UN Development Partnership Fund. Next year, we will meet in Buenos Aires to mark the 40th anniversary of the UN Conference on Technical Cooperation among Developing Countries. Today, we celebrate the first anniversary of the India-UN Development Partnership Fund, and it's therefore a good time to recall some of the messages from another meeting that took place 40 years ago, which continue to underpin India's approach to South-South cooperation. The Buenos Aires Action Plan noted that effective practical measures should be taken by governments and multilateral technical cooperation agencies for dealing with the special problems and requirements of the least developed, landlocked, islands and most seriously affected countries in order to increase their capacities. The plan of action also noted that special efforts should be made by developing countries as a whole with the support of developed countries, as the Secretary General also alluded to, and of the United Nations Development System to channel through technical cooperation among developing countries the technical and financial resources to assist them. And we can see India lives up to its commitments. The resources India is committing to through the India-UN Development Partnership Fund are non-earmarked and in the spirit of sustained predictable funding for both the Sustainable Development Goals and South-South cooperation. In March this year, together with UNDP, UNOPS signed a partnership agreement with the government of India to expedite post-earthquake reconstruction process in Nepal. Under this agreement, the government of India will provide a US $16.2 million grant to the two UN agencies in order to support the safe and resilient reconstruction of 50,000 houses in Gorkha and Nuvakot, two of the districts hit hardest by the 2015 earthquake. And UNOPS is really honored to be called to the table to discuss new projects with the government of India, the UN Office of South-South Cooperation and other partners, and we will do our utmost to contribute solid project implementation. And in conclusion, Your Excellency, you said last year, India's approach to cooperation can be summarized as Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or the whole world is one family. And this summarizes in an elegant way, more elegant than I was able to, the importance of working together. UNOPS stands ready to work with our partners from India and the UN family and with recipient countries as one family. And we are all in this together, and we are committed to leaving no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Feremo, now I would like to excuse the administrator of UNDP who has another commitment. I don't have any football analogies to bring now. We can discuss that later. It's my pleasure to ask Ambassador Walton Alfonso Webson, the permanent representative of Antigua and Barbuda, to take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I'll follow the pattern of Mr. Steiner, the administrator, and say all protocols observed. And I want to first of all thank the Ambassador of India and the Indian team for inviting me and giving me the honor to speak on behalf of the 25 countries that are partners with India through this remarkable India United Nations Development Partnership Fund. I would like to convey to India from all of us, least developed countries, landlocked developed countries, developing countries, and particularly from small island states like mine, SIDS, our appreciation for their support, and to let them know how meaningful India's support and the approach is to our achievement in our effort to achieve the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. India's leadership has been particularly beneficial to our countries due to the support of climate resilience that they have focused on. This is necessary for our achievement and for our survival within the SDGs. The timeliness and the response to country requests, most important, particularly, and I know from my own country's experience recently, particularly when we are fighting to recover from a hurricane in time to beat the next season. India's climate leadership is exemplary and helpful. India has heeded the small island states' call for climate resilience and is acting on the reality that we faced. We believe and we have said we cannot achieve the SDGs without international support on climate. The challenges we face are real. They're great as the sea waters are constantly warming and therefore intensifying hurricanes that ravages our shores. Sea waters are closing in around many of us, and salt waters are often compromising our freshwater ponds and freshwater lakes on land. SIDS have been saying for years that the climate, in any climate discussion, that hurricanes are real. It's no longer just a talk. India is taking this seriously and is taking initiatives to answer our appeals and support our efforts for survival and to maintain our property and countries. In 1 year, India has supported 16 small island developing countries in programs. She provided support to, as you heard mentioned earlier, 7 Pacific Islands nations in their effort, and we have heard how that program is going. The fund has reached out in helping to rehabilitate schools in Dominica, a neighboring island to my own island, and helping to train and be involved in responding to rebuilding stronger, better, and more resilient. In my own home country, the fund was important to us in helping us in the rebuilding and recovery efforts on Barbuda. She has responded in our efforts to rebuild the hospital and the postal service to put public service back on the island as soon as possible. These projects are have only added to the large picture of India's leadership on climate issues. The great progress is seen in India's effort on carbon, as India is one of the countries that have tracked exceedingly well the targets towards that we set in Paris. As we said, as small island states, 1.5 to stay alive. India is working towards the agreed effort of getting below 2 degrees Celsius, all the while increasing wealth and property amongst people in her own country. The pledge to eliminate all single use of plastic in India seems to be well on the way. India founded the International Solar Alliance, a partnership for countries in solar-rich countries to cooperate and to use renewable energy, something that we in the Caribbean and in many of the SIDS welcome. More relevant to us here today is that India has pledged this week to power the United Nations Secretariat, including the very room into which we are sitting. So next year when we sit here, we'll be sitting in renewable energy powered or clean energy powered room. I think that deserves In my country's experience in this fund projects, India was amongst the first countries to respond to our appeal for assistance after Hurricane Irma ravaged our twin island. She did not wait for the pledging conference, which we held in November. She responded immediately. She responded immediately by providing us with funds that we could use right away to begin the process, and followed up with funds to help us in the more long-term reconstruction. As a result of this partnership with India, we have formulated projects that can certainly help us in our efforts to rebuild better and our efforts to beat, if not, to be in some readiness for the next hurricane season. I want, therefore, once again, to take the opportunity to thank Ambassador Saeed myself for his response to my personal discussions and requests to him, to thank the government of India for their effort, for their support to the reconstruction and development in Antigua and Barbuda, and for their response to the small island states in our appeal for assistance. I want to express with deep satisfaction our partnership, and we look forward to the growth of this fund and the continued relationship between India and SIDS and developing countries. I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador Webson. And now I'm pleased to invite Ms. Katoa Utoikamanu, the High Representative for LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS, to make use of the mic.
Your Excellencies, friends and colleagues, I'm very honored to be among you to take pride and encouragement in and the important achievement of the India UN Development Partnership Fund. I thank you, Ambassador Akbaruddin, and the people of your country for the long-standing partnership between India and OHR LLS. We have a strong bond. It is our shared concern to advance a sustainable development of the most vulnerable groups of countries. This is not an option. It is what we must do if we want to live up to our promise to leave no one behind. Allow me to quote Mahatma Gandhi. I quote, "The difference between what we do and what we are capable of doing would suffice to solve most of the world's problems," end of quote. Indeed, if we are capable of exploring outer space, if we're capable of creating artificial intelligence, we must show, like you do show with the fund, that we can extend our hands, hearts and minds to improve the lives of millions of people in the LDCs, LLDCs and SIDS. These are the more than 1 billion people most affected by poverty, instability, hunger, and often dramatic adverse impacts of climate change. Allow me to join our Secretary General and others in once more thanking you for India's partnership and leadership and dedication to improving lives for all. OHR LLS, on behalf of the Secretary General, is a voice for the over 1 billion people living in the LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS. The fund's emphasis on unlocking the potential of the vulnerable countries so that they can realize the ambitions of the Sustainable Development Goals for the full benefit of their peoples could not be more critical or timely. But there's more to it. It is your dedication to a modality of partnering we call South-South cooperation and to the multilateralism which started out. Yours is a demand-driven approach, an approach driven by solidarity with no conditionality and always respectful of the sovereignty of partner countries. On behalf of the SIDS and as an islander of the Pacific myself, I am naturally heartened to see your engagement for the SIDS. The fund's already very strong project pipeline that contributes to strengthening climate resilience truly is a lifeline. Climate resilience is a key to so many of the interlinked sustainable development challenges of the SIDS. Just last week, OHR LLS, in partnership with our colleagues from IOM, held a briefing on the interlinkages between migration and climate change. As I said in my opening remarks, unless we act now, we will be in the perfect storm. Well, I do hope we're not already in it. Throughout the briefing, SIDS stressed the critical role of South-South cooperation to build resilience through sharing, adapting and scaling up success for cost-effective practices and leveraging South-South cooperation for urgent energy and technology advances that must happen now. The India-UN Partnership Fund takes a strong lead in this regard. Excellencies, leaving no one behind is the central promise of the 2030 Agenda. When the global community signed off on Agenda 2030, we promised people, real people if I may say, that we will address poverty, build a future of shared opportunity and prosperity, and protect the only one planet we have as our common and shared house. We now have already 3 years into the operational path of Agenda 2030, and we have no time to waste. South-South cooperation, since its early days in 1974, when the General Assembly endorsed the establishment of the special unit within UNDP, has acted as a crucial conduit for the vulnerable groups of countries. South-South cooperation has demonstrated unique strengths, and I'm confident that the already growing momentum will only strengthen and accelerate. South-South cooperation is about solidarity. Its greatest strength may well be its diversity of form and flows. Together with Agenda 2030, the Istanbul Programme of Action, the Vienna Programme of Action, the Samoa Pathway, and the Addis Ababa Action Agenda all highlight South-South cooperation as critical to their implementation. Over the years, South-South cooperation has been, as we say here, fully mainstreamed into the way in which OHR LLS meets the mandate entrusted to it by its member states. We have and remain more than ever committed to building multi-stakeholder partnerships to accelerate the implementation of all the programs of actions entered into for the benefit of the people of the LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS. We have, in close partnership with the office of our colleagues in the South-South cooperation, have strongly contributed to enhance South-South cooperation. In this regard, I wish to appraise you of two recent developments. Just a week ago, the Technology Bank for the LDCs was officially inaugurated in Gebze, Turkey, by the government of Turkey in the presence of our Deputy Secretary General. This is a milestone for many reasons. Last but certainly not least, this marks the first SDG target now officially reached. The Technology Bank itself is about South-South cooperation and its contribution to multilateralism and sustainable development. Excellency Ambassador Akbaruddin, India is known for its great advances with the Digital India program or your Smart Cities program. You know how science, technology, and innovation are key drivers for sustainable structural transformation. This also is the heartbeat of the Technology Center. Innovative technologies developed in the South respond to the contextual needs of the developing countries. They are easily adaptable. This, however, requires access to modern clean energy and modern communication technologies. My second news is that in partnership with the United Nations Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development, OHR LLS will shortly launch a report on the key importance of broadband for national development at the HLPF. Innovative solutions for ICT from the Global South will have much to contribute to overcome the existing challenges in that area. Excellency, India has been a long-standing partner of OHR LLS. You always have focused and continue to focus on transformative approaches that ensure robust and inclusive growth, creation of infrastructure and jobs, and ensuring access to modern energy. With your initiatives, you seek transformation across the entire development landscape. South-South cooperation championed by India has been expressed through many ways, ranging from providing scholarships to promoting technology transfer to capacity building, dispatching experts, just to name a few. OHR LLS is grateful for India and the Indian people continue to support to the work we do on behalf of the 91 countries. Just yesterday, we received your generous grant of $250,000 for the critical midterm review of the Vienna Program of Action for the 32 landlocked developing countries to be held next year. Thank you for your unwavering commitment to the promoting inclusive, equitable, and sustainable development for all women, men, boys, and girls. Excellencies, our Secretary General has made it clear over and over again we do not have the luxury to waste time. People want our collective action. Words alone will not do. I hope all of us, every day in our respective functions, we show what we are capable of doing. Let the Partnership Fund and its work be an inspiration to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam High Representative. Now we have a moment, some minutes for an interactive dialogue. And with your agreement, I would like to invite our colleagues in the field who have been waiting. Sorry? Some ambassadors have to leave, please. Sorry, next we invite the resident coordinators, but now there are some ambassadors who need to leave. So please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry I have to run to the airport, so I thought we'll just, but we cannot not put in a word of special thanks to you, Ambassador, but through you to the government and people of India for spurring on what actually needs to happen. Not a replacement of North-South cooperation, but certainly strengthening South-South cooperation. Liberia is now a partner country. We're benefiting from a project intended to empower communities and improve the minds, especially of our young people in extremely rural Liberia. The project will go a long way to enabling the government reach out to those who are in extreme need, having suffered a protracted period of conflict and having seen decline in education in our country. Your assistance to us, working through UNICEF, will enable us reach children who really need help in spurring on our drive for SDG. And so I want to thank you, I want to congratulate you, and I want to encourage you to continue this process. And as I leave, may I just reiterate what you just said about your 1, 2, 3 steps. It is important that we find a way working through these projects to accelerate the processing so that these projects get done in a timely manner for the people who really need it the most. Thank you again.
I would like to give the word to the permanent representative of Belize.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the ambassador from India, Said, for giving me this opportunity to publicly say thank you for setting up the fund along with your government, or your government through you setting up this fund. Belize has been the beneficiary of the fund for 2 projects. And so I can speak from first-hand knowledge as to how the fund works. It's a sensibly administered fund, and it's administered with integrity. That's the first thing I want to say. And the reason why I say it's sensibly administered is because, first of all, it's for projects that your country desires to put in place to implement its priorities for the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's of your choice, our country's choice. That's the first thing that makes it really attractive to us. The second thing is that it's simple access. That's very important. It's simple access to the mission of India, and then it, after it's approved, it then develops into more details. So it's simple access. And thirdly, it's for projects that are ready to go. In other words, it's not going to fund these endless feasibility studies that go on a shelf. So it's very practical, and Belize has benefited from it, I can personally say so. And I thank you for taking this leadership role as an emerging superpower. I think it sets a good example, and thank you so much, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Madam Permanent Representative. Now I would like to give the word to Vanuatu, the Permanent Representative.
All protocols observed, and let me, on behalf of the Vanuatu government and its people, thank you, India, thank you, Ambassador, and also thank the United Nations for this important partnership. We have agreed on the 2030 agenda and the Paris Agreement on climate change, which forms the basis of our international cooperation. And all these international agendas are talking about partnership, an innovative partnership, mobilizing resources, access to markets. And these partnerships shows that we are moving from rhetoric to implementation. So this is a partnership where we can see action. We thank you also because we are one of the recipients. We receive a huge amount of money for our standards, and it's for our baseline report on our SDGs. And I think, good data is good for policy, not only good for policy, but for efficiency of expenditures, for accountability, for transparency, and for good governance. I was back in Vanuatu 3 weeks ago, and I was talking to students, and they were asking me, what is the role of the UN? What is UN really doing? Because they've seen it from an abstract, it's like an abstract concept. And what do they really do for us? So I explained that we have a fund that will help us with our statistics, and India and the UN is helping. So in this way, you can connect with what's up there and explain to the people how the UN and all the partnerships that are involved helps the people on the ground. Once again, thank you, India. Thank the government of India and its people, and also thank the United Nations for the partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now I invite the Permanent Representative of Palau.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Excellencies, colleagues. All protocol observed. I would like to take this opportunity to really thank the government of India and the UN for partnering and initiating and launching this fund that's now celebrating its first year anniversary on World Oceans Day. I wanted to also really just agree with my colleague from Antigua, Belize, and Vanuatu, and just say that for small island countries like Palau, it's hard to go back to our countries and justify the relevance of the UN, because most of the time, the community and the people, they want to see what benefits they get on the ground. One of our biggest challenges was when we adopted these 17 goals is how are we going to implement them? The most important SDG is really partnerships. And for us, you may think that, okay, I'm the PR from Palau, I'm going to talk about oceans and climate. But actually today I'm going to talk about India's willingness to help Palau. This year is our 2018, we launched the Year of Good Health. And we often, yes, environment, oceans, climate change, but at the heart of it all is the people. I don't know if many of you know that Palau is one of the Pacific Islands and also in the world, top 10 most obese countries per capita. So one of our issues is how do we implement SDG 3, which is ensuring the good health and well-being. And we've gone to our donors, our biggest donors, which is, our development partners, and most of them, they can't fund improving the basic services, which is renovating our community health centers. Because oftentimes when people get sick, they go to the main hospital. The main hospital in our countries, small islands, is just one. It gets so overwhelmed. You get a fever, you go to the big hospital. So what happens is we created this community health centers, but they weren't providing the basic service to address the needs before then you go to the main hospital. And for Palau, 80% of our hospital government expenditures goes to the sick people. So how do we change that mindset? And India is the only country that has come and said, well, give us what you have, it's nationally driven, and we're willing to do it. And I'll be honest, the first time I approached Ambassador Syed this year, for my country, we're always thinking small. And sometimes we have to think big. And so we came with a $50,000 project, and they said, no, we need a bigger project. Give us a big one. And I go back to my Ministry of Health, and they're like, really? We can just do that? So I'm really encouraging the rest of the other countries and my colleagues that, it's a good thing. And we have to also applaud South-South. Yes, we have the North-South partnerships. But India is really showing its strength that they can also be a good partner in ensuring that people remain healthy. And at the end of the day, we are here for our people. So I just wanted to take the floor and say thank you so much. And the rest of you, please submit your proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. Now I would like to give the floor to the Permanent Representative of Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me also join my colleagues in expressing our thanks and appreciation to our dear friend, Said, and working in partnership with United Nations in the South-South Cooperation. This cooperation actually epitomizes the cooperation of the people and countries in the South. It begs for no other thing other than the poor assisting the poor and the needy coming to the aid of the needy. And there, India comes in to champion that cause. For us in Sierra Leone, the diversification of the fund to capture areas of peace building, it actually presses the nerve line of our development, security, democracy, and the rest of it. Even before this time, when the fund was at initial 1 million, my friend Said, in our bilateral discussions, encouraged me that Sierra Leone should file in a project proposal. And we are working on it. And this time, we're going to submit one. Besides the area of South-South cooperation, India, for Sierra Leone, we have Indian residents and Indian nationals who are Sierra Leoneans. They play a greater part in the movement and development of the agenda for prosperity. Today, we are not prosperous, but at the same time, we are rich in terms of stability after 11 years of war. So let us tap into the experience and philanthropy of India in order to make the South-South cooperation a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Now I would like to give the word to the representative of Grenada.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm adding my voice of profound gratitude to the people and government of India through you, Syed. We've heard today the terms partnership, we've heard inspiration, we've heard commitment, and India truly encapsulates all those terms and much more. Grenada has been one of the first 3 countries that benefited from the Commonwealth window under the fund. We had 3 projects actually approved, and I want to underscore the importance and the high impact of the expeditious implementation that India has been pressing for, and I think has achieved that task and that aspiration. We have had the partners, again, I would also like to thank the UN agencies, the partners that have come on board. In Grenada, we have UNICEF in one of our projects. We have the UN Office of Project Services. We have PAHO, They've all come on board on these projects, and they hit at least 4 SDGs. I know you talk about the magic number 3, but we have had at least 4. We have to achieve no poverty, to have 0 hunger, good health and well-being, and quality education. So we've had actually the first 4 SDGs being, trying to be achieved through these projects that India has so graciously facilitated. So I just want to say again, Syed, just want to, voice and note particular Grenada's profound gratitude to you personally. You have taken a personal hand in getting these projects approved in expeditious manner. So I say India, the project accelerator. Thank you.
Now I would like to give the floor to the representative of Benin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear Jorge, dear Saïd, dear colleagues, mon salut amical aux représentants résidents à Cotonou. Thank you very much for inviting us to this important event, marking the first anniversary of the South-South Cooperation Partnership with India. I would like to commend your efforts in helping countries like Benin to achieve the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goal. Developing agribusinesses in Benin for a better attractiveness of agricultural job is one of the prime objectives of India and the UN Partnership Fund. As far as Benin is concerned, our project has been launched in May this year, and it's called Agribusiness Development in Benin. And this project is seeking to promote youth agricultural entrepreneurship and to facilitate this access to markets. The project will also facilitate the organization of an entrepreneur group and support participants' ability to gain access to land. It will also strengthen their technical skills, business plans, and incubation in small agricultural business. My country counts, as of today, 60% of its population being composed by youth, with a majority of girls and young women. And we consider that the youth in Benin is playing a leading role for the development of our countries. So achieving a sustainable and inclusive economic growth through job creation for the young people is the only way to achieve unprecedented productivity in the agricultural production in my country. The priority sectors of these projects and for the government will be the production of pineapple, cashew nuts, rice, cassava, palm oil, although we used to be in the early 60s one of the power of palm oil, aquaculture, and soya. So we are seeking maintaining the momentum, Said, and you can count on us. And we are hoping that at the end of the day, the objective set for our project will enable 10,000 producers for their activities. So I kept for the very, very last the nasty part figures. And just to say that as of today, this project is co-funded by my government, the Office for the South-South Cooperation, and your country. And the first phase is established at 1.5 million, including 300,000 catalytic US dollars. So thank you very much for this one, and we will keep the momentum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now With your license, I would like to invite the resident coordinators who have been waiting, and some of them are very late in their days. So I would like to start with Mario Samaya in Mauritania for him to make some brief comments on his experience with the fund.
Thank you, Jorge. Excellencies, esteemed permanent representative of India, and all the other PRs present, dear colleagues from the South Cooperation Office, dear colleagues RC, good afternoon or evening to all. I'll say a few words about the South Cooperation in Mauritania. With support from the South Cooperation Office and funding from the India Development Fund, the UN system is working very closely with the government of Mauritania, clearly, to improve the health of mothers and newborns, supporting 11 reproductive health centers. The World Health Organization is leading the strengthening of the skills of midwives and health center staff to support pregnant women, deliveries, and newborn care. This is a key focus of the initiative, the strengthening of the skills. In addition, there is improvement to infrastructure that is being carried out and provision of equipment to this centers. I think the benefits of increased access for the most vulnerable population to quality health services constitute a direct positive impact on beneficiaries, as well as a concrete contribution towards the SDGs at the level of the population. The India Fund, channeled through the South Cooperation Mechanism, is clearly supporting the acceleration of SDGs implementation at the community level, where it is really required in order to leave no one behind. In addition to this most needed and very direct impact on beneficiaries, this particular action funded by India has a number of other important benefits to it. First, it is entirely government-led and aligned to country priorities. And I would like to spend a word of gratitude to Ambassador Ba, the Mauritanian PR, not sure if he is in attendance, for his tireless efforts in this sense. The project has also provided the next opportunity to reinforce the already strong cooperation between the Mauritanian government, the UN development system, and the RC. And I think we should note that the reinforcing partnership is an SG in itself. I'm very clear from the PR of Palau a few minutes ago. Development of local skills and capacity are at the core. Coupled with the full engagement of government, this is a great base for sustainability of the action. If you allow me a few words more, the development of local capacity is also absolutely central in working on the nexus between humanitarian and development planning. And this is a key point in reducing future vulnerabilities. I think I'll conclude here. Thank you all for listening, and special thanks to the government and the people of India for leading on SS cooperation globally and for supporting health services in Mauritania, and to the Office of South Cooperation for their support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mario. Now I would like to invite our colleague Stephen O'Malley in Barbados for a brief statement.
Well, thank you very much. And I'd like to also thank all of the excellencies in the room today, and particularly the government of India for their support. The country team that I lead, we've been working with 4 different countries to implement projects under the fund. Antigua and Barbuda, as Ambassador Webson has already described, rebuilding the only hospital on the island of Barbuda. In Grenada, as the permanent representative has also described, they're working on biomedical waste incineration, on public service training, and on an early childhood development facility. In Dominica, again, a hurricane-affected country, we're rebuilding 2 schools. And in St. Vincent and the Grenadine, it's about agricultural production, agricultural processing. I think the diversity of these initiatives, which are implemented by UNDP, by PAHO, by the UN Office for Project Services, United Nations Children Fund, and the Food and Agriculture Organization, really exemplifies the broad reach of the SDGs, and the idea of South-South cooperation at work. So we really have the entire UN system through my country, through the country team that I lead, working across the SDGs, thanks to the fund and the efforts of India. So thank you very much for your support and for this opportunity for the United Nations system to work with you.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Malley. Now we come back to the room, and I have to give the last word to the representative of Uruguay. I have 4 other delegations that asked for the floor, but the time has caught up with us. So, Uruguay, you have the last word.
Very briefly, we thank the Permanent Mission of India and the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation for the invitation, and we seize this opportunity to congratulate you both for this fund's first year anniversary. In order to advance the 2030 agenda globally, South-South cooperation plays a strategic role. A group of developing countries have accumulated important level of knowledge and resources to contribute in the search of solutions towards the achievement of the SDGs. Partnerships as the India UN Fund are paramount. India in particular has put a strong focus in the development of science, technology and innovation as a tool for economic growth and human development. India's know-how in these fields, along with the expertise of the United Nations Office for South-South Development as a key actor to connect the developing countries, are strategic for advance towards sustainable development. Let me briefly share with you, and I'm glad to do it, the main features of the project Uruguay Government of Proximity and Accountability, with a budget of $250,000 approved recently in February, and which its implementation will start very soon. The project, aligned with SDG 16, will strengthen the Uruguayan government's accountability towards its citizens through the establishment of digital follow-up systems for dialogue on public policies and programs. We look forward, Ambassador, to continue working with you in the future, and once again, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. With your agreement, I will declare this meeting over. On behalf of my office and the whole UN system, thank you again for the generosity of India, for the partnership with all the member states, and we commit to do the 1-2 and work with the Secretary General on ensuring that the 3 is fully accomplished by the time we commemorate future anniversaries of the fund. Thank you very much. The meeting is over.
Thank you. Thank you.